Welcome to the Foreign Service Institute's Mabini Dialogue. My name is JJ and I shall be your moderator for this afternoon. Today, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Michael Magkalit to speak on small powers and the security utility of trade. This afternoon's lecture will delve on the strategic behavior of small powers in the international system, which can be described in one word: dependence. This dependence creates strategic disadvantages that force the small powers to take more innovative approaches to security, although not all do so. Exploring how weaker states use trade to solve their security concerns and the trade-offs they make to do so can provide insight into when strategic innovation takes place and when such approaches are more or less effective. So before we begin, allow me to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Michael Magkalit is an assistant professor at Musashi University in Tokyo, Japan, where he teaches international relations and East Asian studies courses. He is also a visiting lecturer in the Graduate School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Tsukuba. His research interests are in the areas of security studies and international political economy, with special focus on small powers in Asia. His works have been published in various academic journals, including World Affairs, Japanese Journal of Political Science, and Journal of Human Security, among others. He is also the author of Small Powers and Trading Security, Contexts, Motives, and Outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Dr. Michael Magkalit.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for being here this afternoon. I know you're very busy, but you decided to be here. So thank you, and thanks for that warm welcome. I really appreciate it. I'm really very excited to be sharing with you my research, which I've been working on for the last 4 years when I was doing my PhD. I was very lucky for the PhD to be able to publish into a book, which is what you see right here. It's the title of which is Small Powers and Trading Security, Context, Motives, and Outcomes. The main reason why I really wanted to focus on small powers is because as a scholar from a small country like the Philippines, I've always wanted to help contribute to the literature and how we could better promote our interest to the international community. And if I were to be very optimistic, I hope in some ways this book is able to influence or at least help shape the foreign policies that the country is trying to implement. So with that, I will begin my presentation. Right, so I will begin by arguing that the strategic behavior of small powers in the international system, what mentioned a while ago, can be described in one word, and that is dependence. While a single universally accepted definition of the term small powers remains debatable, nonetheless the extant literature reveals recurring features of their behavioral approaches to world politics. First, the small powers clearly recognize that it is both futile and reckless to rely exclusively on their own capabilities to obtain security, let alone influence the conduct of world politics to work for their advantage. Nevertheless, through concerted efforts, the small powers are able to steer the general course of international politics by manipulating the working of the system, but with limited success. Since small powers do not enjoy a decisive and indispensable role in great powers' wide range of political and military resources, their policy options are limited to either neutrality or alliance. And if you took up basic international relations courses, I think that's pretty straightforward. Second, the small powers also tend to favor the status quo, preferring to operate within the existing arrangement instead of plotting to fight against it, or revise the status quo. And the reason for this is the fact that the small powers' policies are primarily designed to reduce the unfavorable discrepancy in strength, broaden the field of maneuver and choice, and increase the total resources on which the state can count in times of stress. So there's scarce resources, peripheral locations in the international system, and the international system itself obliges small powers to set clear priorities. Now, once these priorities are established, security risks and threats are then assessed and ranked according to their severity and importance. With very limited hard and soft powers to protect their interests, the small powers are forced to globalize those issues that they deem to pose the most little threat to their existence. And precisely because of that second point, small powers tend to have high regards for international laws and institutions, as these instruments help them to reduce the cost of conducting foreign policies on the one hand and add weight to their foreign policies on the other. So naturally, small powers are active members of the international community and supporters of various international organizations. They help adopt their normative values, and at the same time, they also help spread their moral aspirations. To improve their less than ideal position, the small and weak states tend to lobby to institutionalize formal rules and regulations in hopes of curbing the influence and sometimes aggressive actions of the great powers. Fourth and lastly, given their size and position in the international system, the small powers tend to display high levels of paranoia. They view international politics as a pernicious activity that brings more risks than opportunities. Being the risk-averse that they are, the small powers take a defensive rather than an offensive approach when discussing their grievances with respect to the great powers, in order to basically minimize grave consequences. The key strategy is to reduce the uncertainties of the risk that they have identified and to ensure their damaging effects are mitigated. While great powers are projecting their power and authority on a global scale, the small powers are mainly concerned about how to extract demands from their immediate environment. And such behavior reflects the narrowness of small powers' range of interest and their lack of independence to decide and execute these decisions on their own. Now, all these strategic advantages, they can force small powers to take a more innovative approaches to security, although not all small powers do so. And exploring how weaker states use trade to solve their security concerns, and the trade-offs that they make to do so can provide insights into when the strategic innovation takes place and when such approaches are more or less effective. And this is a particularly important path of inquiry, not only because this is my research, but because given the changes in the nature of both trade and security. On the one hand, trade is no longer simply the exchange of commodities and finished products. And on the other, understandings of security now encompass considerations and understandings of human security. So such shifts mean that the reassessments of the relationship between trade and security are timely. That's precisely the reason why I decided to look into the linkages between security and trade. In this book, I provide an in-depth analysis and a narrative presentation of the security and trade linkages that is shaping the East Asian contemporary security environment. East Asia here is defined both as Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. And for all states in the region, trade has become a very vital platform for pursuing various components of the national interest. The insecurities that are being induced by domestic contexts, which a host of external factors are aggravating or tend to amplify, compel East Asian states, particularly the small and weak ones, to proactively engage in various trade agreements and negotiations. Hence, the whole region as a whole provides an idyllic backdrop for testing theories and hypotheses of cohabitation between the security interests of a state, of small powers in particular, and their trade agendas. Using multiple case studies, elite interviews, and documentary analysis, I theorize and produce new empirical knowledge about, number one, why and how the small powers link their security interests and trade agendas. Second, how traditional and non-traditional security threats or issues influence the facilitation and outcomes of small powers trade activities. I believe that everyone is familiar with the concept of traditional and non-traditional security, right? When we say traditional security, basically we refer to military threats to the state. When we say non-traditional security, we refer to non-military threats to the state. So it encompasses many other aspects, including economics, environment, and those things. Finally, I also explore how statist, meaning state-centric and humanist or human-centric linkages affect the small powers' primary security reference and overall security. Now, in order to answer these questions, I performed two main tasks in the book. The first one is I theoretically reconfigured the security concept by amalgamating the state and human dimensions of security to establish the cohabitative security framework. And once I've done that, the second task that I did is to empirically analyze the linkages between cohabitative security reference and various forms of trade agreements. I argue that in their quest to promote and enhance their statist and humanist security reference, the small powers have learned to reimagine and reinvent the utility of free trade. When we say referent, we borrow Bari Buzan and the Wild as well as Weaver's definition. They define the term referent as pertaining to things that are seen to be existentially threatened and therefore have a legitimate claim to survival. The high levels of internal and external insecurities, the marginal geoeconomic size and peripheral geopolitical position, and the multidimensional and multidirectional security contexts and threats have compelled small powers to link their security interests and trade agendas. Depending on the nature and origin of threats and the underlying security context observed, trade performs a multifaceted function. In Taiwan, for instance, trade is a sovereignty upgrading mechanism. In Singapore, it's a defense upgrading mechanism. In the Philippines, it can be considered as a development upgrading instrument. And in Malaysia, it is a diversity upgrading apparatus. However, as I have illuminated in this book, these linkages work like a double-edged sword that produce mixed outcomes. The reason is that for every additional security that a linkage provides a specific referent, a corresponding insecurity is reflected in other reference. Put differently, for every security enhancement that a linkage provides or creates, a consequent insecurity is generated. As such, states that attempt to link their security interests and trade agendas are essentially trading security, and that's where I got the title of the book. Nevertheless, despite these new forms of risk and uncertainties that are generated by these linkages, the small powers are bent on maintaining, if not even reinforcing them due to the underlying belief that the future will be bleak unless these are undertaken, or at least a strong conviction on their part that their security outcomes will be inferior than the likely ones produced by these linkages. So those are my main arguments. And before we proceed with the explanations of my case studies, I would like to first explain my definition of the term security and trade. Security remains to be one of the most highly contested concepts in the social sciences. And the security debate has been dominated by discussions between what we call expansionists, or those who believe that the security definition must be very comprehensive, and the non-expansionists or the restrictionists, or those who argue that the security definition should be limited. However, if we rethink security based on this approach, it is inadequate because it only addresses the scope while neglecting the equally important issues of referent and approach. Given the importance of the primary referent in defining the core values, the nature of the threats, and types of strategic approaches of a specific security model, any initiatives aimed at rethinking the malleable concept of security must begin with the issue of the referent. In short, to whom is security for? Is the concept of security limited to the state as our primary referent, or should we also include individuals, groups, and societies? Now, for the realist, of course, it's non-debatable because they argue that for as long as the state remains the primary form of political community and the principal actor of both domestic and global politics, it will continue to be the chief provider and agent of security. So if one considers the role of the state as a leading security guarantor and the state system as the main determinant of state behavior, realists argue that the state is the rightful, exclusive, primary referent of security. However, these realist claims face several challenges. The first criticism points to the constantly diminishing capacity of the state for fulfilling some of its key functions, including the provision of national security, of welfare, identity, and even environmental protection. The state is either too big or too small to satisfy basic human needs and efficiently address immense regional and global threats. The second criticism relates to the paradoxical role of the state as a progenitor of insecurity rather than security provider. And this makes non-state actors antagonistic and hostile toward the state actors. And the third criticism as to why we should expand the definition of security asserts that the state should not be viewed as an end goal in itself. On the contrary, the state should be seen as an apparatus designed to secure the life and freedom of the people and the communities. Accordingly, national security should be defined in terms of the individuals, in terms of the groups, of the societies that constitute the state per se. Now, figure 1 here illustrates the cohabitation of the statist and humanist dimensions of security to form cohabitative security framework. As shown in this figure, cohabitative security emphasizes the amalgamation between the high politics of the state security and the low politics of human security when articulating and implementing the national security rhetoric and agenda. The underlying assumption here is that state security and human security complement one another. State security does not always undermine human security, nor does it deliberately compete with individuals and communities. Similarly, human security does not necessarily threaten the state, nor does it have to be in constant competition with state actors and agencies. In short, state and human security are mutually constitutive rather than mutually corrosive. On the one hand, cohabitative security emphasizes that the state has never been completely obsolete due to the inferred cultural support that buttresses the principle and practice of sovereign statehood at the global level. The state remains to be the ultimate form of organized political community and persists to be the dominant actor in the international system. Therefore, the conceptualization of security in terms of the state continues to be relevant. But on the other hand, the cohabitative security framework also emphasizes that the enduring relevance of the state does not make it the exclusive referent of security. National security cannot be simply equated with state security. While it remains to be the most influential form of political organization, the state now has to coexist with a host of interstate and interstate entities, thereby creating an intricate web of authority and power configuration. What the cohabitative security does is to reintroduce and reintegrate the human within the security policies and strategies being developed and implemented by the states. This enables the assimilation of non-state referents which also have legitimate claims to survival into the national security rhetoric and agenda. It shows how the traditional elements of state security can complement and enhance the non-traditional components of human security and vice versa. Through the amalgamation of statist and humanist security reference, the role of the state with respect to human security is unvilified. The notion that the state and human security are diametrically opposed or inherently contradictory is overcome, thereby allowing state actors to appreciate the multidimensional aspects of security in the 21st century. So this cohabitative security framework right here mainly shows you how we could amalgamate both the state-centric security reference as well as the human-centric security reference. As you can see, based on the diagram, we have many other actors that also play a pivotal role in the implementation and the creation of national security policies and strategies, aside from the state actors. Now, very briefly, I would like to talk about how we can analytically conceptualize different types of trade arrangements. So I focus on two main dimensions: the number of participants involved in an agreement and geographical scope. First, we define the number of participants in terms of unilateral actions and bilateral, unilateral, and multilateral accords. Bilateral accords refer to arrangements between two countries, while unilateral to more than two, but relatively less than the global membership coverage. Meanwhile, when we talk about geographical scope, we distinguish between arrangements that are concentrated geographically and those that bind the states across great distances. So table 1 right here, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but I can enumerate, summarizes a typology of trade agreements with illustrative samples for the Asia Pacific, based on the number of participants and the geographical scope. So first, although I do not examine these types of actions in this project, unilateral actions, as in cell 1, can be quite important. And the most important unilateral closing measures were taken by the United States. If you remember, in 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariff that set a cycle of trade protectionism in motion and aggravated the depression that was taking place at the time. Meanwhile, bilateral agreements of both regional and trans-regional actors have rapidly proliferated over the last few years. CEL2 refers to bilateral regional trade arrangements covering multiple products between a pair of adjacent countries such as the Canada-US FTA, the mainland China Closer Economic Partnership Agreements signed with Hong Kong and Macau, the PRC-ROC Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement. Meanwhile, bilateral trans-regional agreements, as in CEL3, include cases of geographically dispersed bilateral agreements covering multiple products. So they're different from bilateral regional agreements in the sense that the actors involved here do not share the same adjacent space. So examples of this would be the PTAs between the United States and Singapore, Taiwan and Panama, China and New Zealand, United States and Korea. Unilateral regionalism, as noted in CEL4, focuses on geographically concentrated unilateral agreements such as the ASEAN Free Trade or the AFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement or the NAFTA, and the proposed free trade area under the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Unilateral interregionalism, on the other hand, is another important recent development in trade arrangements concerning the links that span across continents, such as those noted in CEL5. And Asia is home to a number of unilateral interregional trade organizations, including the APEC, the ASEAN Plus 3, and the East Asian Summit. Finally, multilateralism, as in CEL6, refers to the case of global multi-product trading arrangements such as the GATT and its successor organization, the WTO. Though highly successful throughout the post-war period, multilateral trade forums at the global level have increasingly encountered difficulties in hammering out new terms of trade liberalization, such as in the Doha negotiation rounds. And this in turn has fueled interest in preferential trade agreements and sub-multilateral level. So now that we've discussed the operational or operationalized terms of security as well as trade, we can now analytically discuss the linkages between trade and security. The underlying assumption here is that the presence of reciprocal relationship between the two variables. Figure 2 provides an illustration of the security-trade linkage process that is used as a basis for examining the impact of trade on various security referents. So on the one hand, and on the influence of security interests on the implementation of consequence of trade on the other. As you can see, statist and humanist linkages are the two types of security trade linkages that are being explored in this book. When we say statist linkages, we refer to the nexus between state, security reference, and trade, while humanist linkages refer to the nexus between human security reference and trade. Under statist linkages, the states are the primary reference of security, whereas under humanist linkages, the individuals, groups, and societies become the main security reference. Here, the linking of security and trade is viewed as an approach or strategy for promoting and enhancing the security reference that are facing existential threats. Now, Table 2 provides a summary of the primary security reference and context, the origins and directions of threats, and dimensions of security explored and analyzed in each of the 4 cases investigated. In the case of Taiwan, the primary security reference investigated is its shrinking de facto sovereign space against the backdrop of cross-strait security paradox engendered by the One China factor. The term sovereign space here refers to Taiwan's de facto sovereign domestic and interdependent sovereignty as opposed to the de jure international legal sovereignty, which represents the statist dimension of cohabitative security. Here, the origin and direction of Taiwan's security is external, and that is China. In the case of Singapore, the primary security referent is its shrinking defense space against the backdrop of multidimensional security complex induced by geographic constraints. I define the term defense space as Singapore's capacity, both military or hard power and non-military soft power, to defend its geo-economic and geopolitical viability, which also represents the status dimension of cohabitative security. So similar to Taiwan, the origin and direction of Singapore's insecurity is external, that is the whole neighboring region. So in the cases of Taiwan and Singapore, security trade linkages are said to be status given the nature of the primary security reference and context, as well as the origins and directions of threats. Meanwhile, in the case of the Philippines, the primary security referent investigated here is its diminishing development space against the backdrop of uneven economic security perpetuated by oligarchic forces. The term development space refers to the capacity of the Philippine government to independently and effectively pursue its economic development goals and objectives amid a deeply entrenched oligarchic system, and the patronage culture which represents the humanist dimension of cohabitative security. So here, the origin and direction of Philippines' security is internal rather than external, and that is the Filipino oligarchy. Finally, in the case of Malaysia, the primary security referent is its diminishing diversity space against the backdrop of domestic security dilemma engendered by a Malay-centric political economy that is being run and maintained by the ruling United Malays National Organization, or the UMNO party, together with the larger Barisan National Coalition, or the BN. The term diversity space refers to the capacity of all ethnic groups in Malaysia to equally participate in the country's political and economic affairs, and also represents the humanist dimension of cohabitative security. So similar to the Philippines, the direction of Malaysia's insecurity is internal. That is, the perpetually ruling political party and regime. So here, in the cases of the Philippines and Malaysia, security trade linkages are said to be humanist, given the nature of their primary security reference and context, as well as the origins and directions of threats. Now, it is important to note that these classifications do not imply that Taiwan and Singapore are exclusively concerned with the status dimension of cohabitative security, nor do they suggest that the Philippines and Malaysia are entirely concerned with the humanist definition. As I have posited earlier, these two dimensions are mutually constitutive and reinforcing, and therefore are both crucial for the overall stability and security of all four countries. Nevertheless, given their prevailing security context, Singapore and Taiwan tend to focus more on state security, whereas the Philippines and Malaysia tend to put more emphasis on human security. Now, first, I'd like to share with you some of the key findings from my study of Taiwan's security trade linkages. In Taiwan, the reopening of cross-trade links and successful negotiations of bilateral FTAs with non-diplomatic partners have given the Taiwanese leaders, policymakers, and various non-state groups a new hope. However, the fact that these developments have all been guided by the One China principle implies the continued illegitimacy of Taiwanese sovereignty. Although cross-strait rapprochement may have enhanced Taiwan's de facto sovereign space, however, it has been largely inadequate in legitimizing the country's sovereign existence in the global arena. The deep entanglements between Taipei and Beijing's security and trade interests are forcing Taiwanese officials to maintain the prevailing cross-strait status quo. Considering the huge electoral costs involved in adopting a nationalist agenda, both the Kuomintang Party, or the KMT, and the Democratic Progressive Party, which is the current ruling party in Taiwan at the moment, tend to veer away from the controversial policies that are deemed by voters to undermine cross-strait interdependence. On the one hand, voters opposed to political unification condemn a highly China-centric policy. On the other, voters that see opportunities from healthy relations with Beijing reject nationalistic policies. Now, these conflicts compel Taiwanese political parties to prioritize the normalization of cross-strait politics over Taiwan's de jure sovereignty status. And this condition inexorably results in the freezing of issues concerning Taiwan's sovereign interests, which in turn lead to the island's perpetual imprisonment within the One China trajectory. Thus, to improve and sustain their political appeal, the KMT and the DPP have been forced to cooperate with each other by agreeing to endorse a more pro-status quo platforms rather than a more revisionist one which claims Taiwan's de jure sovereignty. The former President Ma's China-friendly approach has indeed eased the tension between Taipei and Beijing. Yet, given China's continual rejection of Taiwan's sovereign statehood, the growing trade and economic relations between the two countries has afforded the former with a new instrument for conquering the latter's remaining sovereign space. This highlights the significant trade-off between Taiwan's competing goals of securing economic interests on the one hand and preserving its political and diplomatic viability on the other. But despite these problems, the Taiwanese leaders have decided that it would be in the best interest of the country to revitalize its trade relations with China, if only to prevent the dilemma from leading into an internal impasse. However, to a large extent, the success of Taiwan's gamble with China is contingent on the level of importance that the Communist Party of China puts on cross-trade and economic relations, as well as Taiwan's resolve to walk away from the agreements when the promised policy changes do not materialize. Regrettably, Taipei's attempts at enhancing its shrinking de facto sovereignty via the security trade linkage strategy is undercut by the lack of autonomy, if not motivation, to cancel payoffs to Beijing, even when Beijing's reactions are already in violations of the prior conditions that have been made. Lastly, the spread of one China rhetoric has also been harmful toward Taiwan's sovereign claims and interests as they help advance the sinicization of the island. By projecting cross-strait relations as domestic matters, in effect, Taiwan becomes one of China's special administrative regions alongside Hong Kong and Macau. In addition, the practice of being observed when signing Taiwanese FTAs between government institutions rather than heads of state also reinforces the notion that Taiwan is merely a local government unit of China. So these one China gestures further erode the island's sovereign space by undermining its diplomatic presence and recognition in the international community. These findings underscores the risk involved in Taiwan's attempts at linking security and trade to secure its sovereign space. The diminishing political friction across the Taiwan Strait has the paradoxical effect of weakening Taipei's claims over de jure independence. Put differently, greater cross-strait rapprochement ironically results in lesser Taiwanese sovereignty. Institutionalizing cross-strait politics without acknowledging the legitimacy of Taiwan's sovereign statehood inevitably absorbs the island within the one China trajectory, from short-term economic to long-term political. The limits of Taiwan's domestic institutional regimes, its nationalist rhetoric and agenda, its export-oriented economy, and even cross-strait economic pacifism have undermined the sovereignty-enhancing utility of Taiwan's linkage efforts by reinforcing the underlying China constraints. Thus, Taiwan is trapped in what appears to be a perpetual prisoner's dilemma that is generated and preserved by the omnipresent China factor. Meanwhile, for a small pragmatic state like Singapore, the means to survival is through sustained economic growth and progress, mainly via free trade. As such, the government has constantly emphasized robust trade performance as a key pillar of national security. Through the systematic exploitation of all available trade channels, be they multilateral, be they preferential, Singapore has successfully positioned itself at the center of regional and global trade arrangements. In this sense, trade serves as a defense upgrading mechanism that enhances and preserves Singapore's long-term viability in international politics. Considering the strategic value of trade interdependence, Singapore has worked harder than any other state in the region to maintain peace and stability precisely because of the crisscrossing webs of trade arrangements on which it has the best of interest to sustain. Amid the siege mentality confronting the People's Action Party, or the PAP, Singapore's pursuit of economic prosperity has been replete with security undertones. The security complex that permeates the whole system has driven the ceaseless securitization of virtually all facets of Singaporean polity. And this is reflected in the manner through which stated security threats have stimulated Singapore's strategic approach vis-a-vis trade. From an economic standpoint, the gains that Singapore can get from further trade liberalization are very limited, considering the almost close to zero tariff and non-tariff barriers. However, due to its lingering paranoia, Singapore is compelled to continuously beef up its trade relations with other countries, both big and small. On the one hand, Singapore has actively promoted trade diplomacy with major powers in East Asia, specifically China and Japan, to deflect the security threats that occasionally emanate from its Islamic neighbors, particularly Malaysia and Indonesia. But on the other hand, Singapore has also persistently pursued bilateral trade negotiations with powerful states outside of East Asia, particularly the United States, to help balance China's unchecked power. By doing so, the PAP government, the PAP government, has effectively consolidated its three main goals: national cohesion, world prestige, and most importantly, its perpetual legitimacy. In fulfilling this task, the level of social compact in Singapore played a very crucial role. Fortunately for the PAP government, the Singaporean citizens have generally shown quiet acceptance and compliance. This condition highlights the rather unique status that the ruling party enjoys. Unlike its counterparts in other countries, the PAP is considered not just a dominant political party, but also the legitimate and rightful custodian of Singapore's national interests and aspirations. As such, the PAP government has faced very little opposition to its formulation and implementation of policies and strategies vis-à-vis trade and security. This arrangement has eventually led to the coalition of the system, the conflation of the system, the government and the party, giving birth to an overarching entity that has now come to define every aspect of Singaporean polity. To maintain this status, the PAP regime now needs to perpetually exploit the country's sense of vulnerability, on which its own political survival ultimately depends. The limits of Singapore's deterrence strategy, alliance and alignment strategy, the PAP-centric security framework, and its very elitist nation building have weakened the defense-upgrading utility of Singapore's linkage efforts by aggravating the underlying geographic constraints. As some observers have argued, economics via free trade is the core of Singapore's foreign policy, although it is not about the individuals. It's about the regime's survival. That is, using free trade economics to promote regime security, which has become synonymous with Singaporean security. Now, in the Philippines, national security is mainly contingent on the government's capacity to bring about a more inclusive and equitable form of economic development. Unfortunately, the power of the very few yet very power-influential Filipino elites to transform the country into an oligarchical or an archipelago of oligarchies underlines the deep-rooted oligarchic system and patronage culture that have come to define and shape Philippine political economy for centuries. The overwhelming primacy of the oligarchies is a symptom of the Philippines' soft state and weak democracy. This domestic arrangement has given rise to a structural poverty and institutionalized inequality that continue to undermine the economic security of the majority of the Philippine population. While oligarchy and patrimonialism do not automatically generate conditions that result in political and economic marginalization, nonetheless, their presence has aided the patrons and the oligarchs to subjugate virtually all dimensions of Philippine political economy. And such conditions have permitted the consolidation of political offices, elected politicians, and even economic policies, thereby securing the interests of the national oligarchy rather than those of the national government. Consequently, even the aggressive adoption of neoliberal trade policies has not given rise to a highly competitive Philippine political economy. The domestic markets created by the country's liberalization programs have been installed and controlled by only few oligarchic families. The subsequent erosion of state capitalism has paved the way for the emergence of oligarchic capitalism, exclusively ruled by small cartels of political and economic elites. This further diluted the infrastructural power of state as little by little bureaucratic institutions came to capture the forces of patronage system and oligarchic culture. Naturally, the oligarchs have strategically exploited the country's ineffective trade policies and mechanisms to further maximize their economic wealth and political power despite their detrimental impacts on poverty and inequality conditions. Moreover, by blocking social equalizing proposals that have redistributive potentials, well, wealth and power are perpetually entrapped within the elite strata of the society. And this systemic culture of oligarchism and patrimonialism is clearly in contrast with the government's people-centric national security model that emphasizes equitable development and inclusive security. However, in the absence of effective countervailing mechanisms that would check and balance the system, the culture that such a system breeds, or vice versa, the government is bent to adopt policies that will only enhance and preserve its patron status and interest. Finally, where political institutions are frail, differences in leadership styles and methods can have enormous effects on political outcomes. The 5 presidents that came after Marcos revealed significant variations with respect to the image and quality of their respective administrations. Corazon Aquino was, for better or worse, a throwback president whose primary agenda was the regeneration of the old oligarchy to restore elite-driven institutions that were sabotaged by her despotic predecessor. Fidel Ramos was a military royalty who bowed down in front of his patrons to negotiate for his watered-down economic reforms. Joseph Estrada was a charismatic actor who misread the role of Robin Hood as he went to pillage the nation's coffers, only to redistribute it among his kinfolk and friends. Gloria Arroyo was the willful presidential daughter whose mastery of economic philosophy enabled her to efficiently plunder the government resources. Lastly, the former President Benigno Aquino III was the acquiescent son whose unforeseen rise to presidency had inspired dreams of a new belle epoque in the Philippines, but failed to compromise his oligarchic roots and upbringing. Thus, the government's attempt at linking its humanist security interests and trade activities have not only preserved the uneven development and economic insecurity in the country, but have also reinforced the debilitating oligarchic system and patronage culture that has withstood 3 waves of colonization. The limits of Philippines' patrimonial democratization, its patrimonial administration, its oligarchic-biased development policies, its patronage-based bureaucracy have undercut the developing, upgrading utility of the Philippines' linkage efforts by exacerbating the underlying oligarchic constraints. The Philippine case is a vivid illustration of how state power can be transmogrified into a powerful device that gives birth to an oligarchipelago, where Filipino oligarchs and patrons run wild and free. Finally, in the case of Malaysia, the noble goal of securing the Bumiputras basically are the native Malays in Malaysia, has been reduced to the narrow pursuit of perpetual supremacy of the UMNO party and the Barisan coalition. The government has effectively rolled out a Malay-oriented social vision through development and implementation of race-based affirmative programs. As far as the ruling parties and regime are concerned, maintaining positive growth via free trade has been a necessary precondition for securing and enhancing the primary referent of Malaysia's national security. And that is a fragile diversity space that provides little to no space for the Bumiputras. This is despite the fact that Malaysia's national security is essentially rooted in the conditions surrounding its remaining diversity space amid its multi-ethnic and multi-religious society. The Barisan's attempts at cultivating a one Malaysia identity have only resulted in the institutionalization of a reductive social framework that proved to be a highly divisive and polarizing instrument that has created a domestic security dilemma. When we say domestic security dilemma, it is the condition in which improvements in the relative security of the non-Bumiputras regrettably lead to the relative insecurity of the Bumiputras. Neoliberal trade and economic policies have played an indirect, albeit pivotal role in the creation and perpetuation of this dilemma. The significant growth and opportunities generated by Malaysia's various trade activities have fueled the formulation and employment of disproportional affirmative policies such as the National Economic Policy, the New Development Policy, and the New Economic Models, which have all been pursued under the pretext of ethnic equality. Malaysia's trade agreements serve 2 implicit roles with respect to the Barisan. First, they buttress alliance relationships that shore up the external legitimacy of the premier and his party. Second, they enhance the country's economic performance, which shores up the premier by portraying national benefits as his own accomplishments. That the Barison's affirmative actions have been criticized by the non-Malays is hardly surprising. What is surprising is the perception of the other Bumiputras that these initiatives are also discriminatory against them. For these non-Malays and non-Muslim Bumiputras, the affirmative actions policies have become exploitative devices for legitimizing the special treatment provided to their Malay and Muslim counterparts. Instead of demanding for equal opportunities, the Muslim Malays are now insisting for the preservation of their exclusive rights and privileges under the Constitution. Indeed, the long-standing question of Bumiputraism for whom remains as crucial today as ever. Although the inefficiencies and externalities created by these affirmative policies and actions have already been manifested in various aspects of Malaysian polity, the ruling party has continued to argue that Malay affirmation is necessary for improving the quality and quantity of space available for the marginalized and powerless Bumiputras. Such justifications should make affirmative policies morally acceptable to everyone in the society. Through the promotion of Malay ethnic interests above all other racial groups, Bumiputraism essentially retarded the development of an inclusive Malaysian nationalism. Given this Malay dominance in virtually all aspects of the domestic affairs, Malaysian security has been narrowly defined in terms of Malay security. But underneath the government's grand rhetoric about the Malay affirmation lay the UMNO and the Barison's special motives and interests that must be protected at all costs. In doing so, ideational and material security apparatuses have been carefully developed to perpetually legitimize the dominance of the ruling party and coalition. While ideological security constructs enabled the imposition of a Barison-sponsored religion to eliminate political rivals, material security apparatuses allowed the suppression of non-Barison conforming ideas to safeguard its status and position. The deracialization of Malaysian policies and interests remains problematic precisely because of how ethnicity is utilized by the UMNO as a currency for buying Bumiputra's exclusive rights and privileges in exchange for their continued support and patronage for the system. In the end, the economic and political limits of Malay affirmation, combined with the limits of Barison's ideological and material security constructs, have diluted the diversity and greater utility of Malaysia's linkage efforts by worsening the underlying Bumiputra constraints. In his book, The Varieties of Scientific Experience, A Personal View of the Search for God, the late Carl Sagan argued that extinction is the rule, survival is the exception. The small powers have searched for ways of circumventing the rule of extinction to ensure their continued survival in the 21st century security environment. The small powers' high level of internal and external insecurities, their marginal geo-economic size and geopolitical position, and multidimensional and multi-directional security contexts and threats have compelled them to take more innovative approaches to security. At the heart of this quest for survival is the desire to increase their capacity to pursue and protect their statist and humanist security reference. As I have established in this book, to enhance their level of security, these states have learned to reimagine and reinvent the use of trade, bilateral, unilateral, and bilateral, by harnessing its strategic utility. However, based on the findings generated from the cases analyzed, these linkages have been a double-edged sword for states that espouse them. And this has been clearly illustrated in the 4 cases presented in the book. In terms of status linkages, for instance, Taiwan's desire for expanding its de facto sovereign space can lead to the island's complete assimilation with China. Similarly, Singapore's objective of securing its defense space can result in its failure to effectively balance and reconcile the conflicting interests of its superpowered partners, in addition to the conflation of the PAP interest with the national interest. In both cases, the security enhancements that these status linkages created vis-a-vis the primary reference of Taiwan and Singapore also generated corresponding risk that can reverse the positive effects of the security trade linkage strategy produced. Meanwhile, in terms of humanist linkages, the Philippines' desire for boosting its development space has not only preserved the uneven economic development in the country, but has also reinforced its oligarchic system and patronage culture. Likewise, Malaysia's objective of augmenting its diversity space has perpetuated ethnic inequalities and further entrenched the status of the UNO-led Barisan coalition. Under both scenarios, the security enhancements that these humanist linkages created vis-a-vis the primary reference of the Philippines and Malaysia also induced equivalent risk that can undo the positive effects of the security threat linking strategy. By enhancing their capacity to pursue their own security interests through these linkages, the small powers are able to curb their insecurities, albeit in a limited way, and with varying results and repercussions. But while these linkages have generated new forms or levels of risk and uncertainties, nevertheless, the small powers are still bent on preserving them, if not even reinforcing them, precisely because of the underlying belief that their future will be bleak unless these are undertaken. Or at least, the very least, a conviction that their security prospects will be worse than the likely ones produced by that linkages. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you so much.